Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin has rejected an immediate and full ceasefire in Ukraine following a call with US President Donald Trump. Mr. Putin said a comprehensive truce would only work if foreign military and aid intelligence sharing in Ukraine would come to an end. And for more on this, I'm joined by Professor of International Politics at University College Dublin, Scott Lucas. Professor Scott Lucas, good to have you on the program again. Now, Donald Trump said he had a great call with Vladimir Putin in saying that it's a big step towards peace. How do you see it?
Well, Vladimir Putin played Donald Trump like a fiddle. He played to Donald Trump's ego, and here's what he achieved out of it. First of all, he took the initiative back from the Ukraine-US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire, which would have been not just on the attacks on energy infrastructure, but also attacks at sea, and indeed attacks on the front line. Secondly, and more importantly, he didn't give up anything in terms of his ultimata to Ukraine. In fact, he restated them. He said that the path to talks has to begin with Ukraine's allies, blocking military aid, blocking intelligence sharing to Kyiv. That would include Australia, for example. So if Ukraine continues to get assistance, Russia continues to hold out against any negotiations to end the war. They've also said that they want recognition of the areas of Ukraine that they occupy. They also want to have control over any monitoring of a ceasefire. And of course, they want the lifting of sanctions on Moscow. And here's what Putin achieved beyond that. The U.S.-Russia talks will resume at the end of this week. We know that from Trump's envoy, Steve Wicklow. And guess who will not be at those talks, or at least there's no indication they'll be at those talks? Ukraine or its European partners.
Yes, and those conditions you spoke of by Vladimir Putin, now he's put that firmly in Donald Trump's court. How do you think Donald Trump would return serve?
If he doesn't return serve, because Donald Trump's playing a different game. Donald Trump's game is that he wants a photo opportunity. He wants to be able to stand alongside Vladimir Putin and declare this great deal that has supposedly ended this Russia invasion. But he has set absolutely no terms for what Russia must do to achieve that deal. So, this is effectively that Vladimir Putin is the one who is, to use your analogy, always serving, and it's always Donald Trump who is returning serve, or more accurately, hitting the ball all over the stadium.
In looking, I suppose, bracing for this call to happen, was Vladimir Putin always going to look for the weak point in the American solution?
Oh, look, the Russians, or specifically Vladimir Putin, has played Donald Trump for almost a decade. I can take you back to what happened in Trump's first term. You know some of that history. What the Kremlin did on this occasion is that after it looked like Ukraine had regained the initiative by talking to some people in the Trump administration and getting this proposal for a ceasefire, they kept dangling this call before Trump. You want to talk to Putin. You admire Putin. You want to talk to Putin. Here you finally go. In other words, the Kremlin had been put on the defensive in recent days, and to regain the offensive, they knew that one phone call was all it's going to take. Now the question is, how does everybody else respond? How does Kyiv respond? How do the European respond? How do countries like Australia respond if it looks like Trump will sort of slide back towards support of the Kremlin?
Unilaterally, though, would Volodymyr Zelensky even consider this partial ceasefire deal to at least stop Russian attacks on energy infrastructure?
Actually, what happened late yesterday was very, very interesting. And Zelensky came out and initially said, look, okay, we welcome in principle the halt to attacks on energy infrastructure. We need to see the details of this. But within a few hours, Russia launched more than 100 drones, in fact, about 125 drones on Ukraine. They fired several ballistic missiles on Ukraine. In other words, Russia continued its attacks, including on energy infrastructure. So the very deal that Putin said he agreed with Trump, Russia did it within a few hours to show strength against Kyiv.
And how would you read into what the major European countries have had to say in response to this deal? I mean, France and Germany say, okay, well, it's an important first step, but still want a full ceasefire. So how is Europe sort of looking at this at the moment?
They don't trust it. And I think the further statements that have come out in the past 2 hours is that you've had the German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, who says that Russia is playing a game. You've had the EU's foreign policy head, Kaja Kallas, say that the Russians are not to be trusted here. And you've had the head of the European Council, Antonio Costa, who says, no, Russia, in fact, has to defend not only Ukraine, it has to defend itself and has to put an emphasis on rearmament. There's no trust here yet in terms of Russia actually wanting to move to anything other than trying to break Ukraine.
And of course, now we are heading towards out of winter in more, I suppose, conditions that are more apt for battle. Do you think Russia now would take this opportunity to sort of take the, maybe escalate what they're doing, particularly in Kursk?
They certainly are trying to close off Kursk now, and I think they will. Ukraine had held part of this region in western Russia since last August after a surprise cross-border attack. And Putin had to regain control of Kursk so it didn't become a point of leverage against him in negotiations. What we watch for now is, will the Russians continue to try to advance in the east and in the south? They have made gradual gains there over the past year, but it's come at a very, very high cost, and they have not been able to take major positions in those areas, despite effectively firing human wave assaults against Ukrainian lines.
And of course, how critical is it for Ukraine to hold on to the territory they have gained in Kursk, and do they have the capabilities to do so?
I think Kursk is they won't be able to hold on to it. And I think they have achieved actually a compensation in that Russia had to pull troops back from the front lines in Ukraine to be able to get Kursk back. What they'll want to do now is to hold the front lines inside Ukraine, because what Putin is aiming for, and he actually told Russian business leaders this even just before the call with Trump, he said, look, we want recognition of our annexation of Crimea and 4 Ukrainian regions, 2 in the east and 2 in the south. But Russia doesn't hold part of those regions in the east. So he's trying to rearrange facts on the ground to justify his ultimata in terms of any talks that are to come.
Okay, Professor Scott Lucas, always great to get your insights and analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.